The convenience store lights buzzed softly at 11:47 p.m. as Hiroshi Tanaka stood frozen in front of a shelf of instant noodles. Outside, Tokyo was still alive. Taxi headlights slid through rain-covered streets, neon signs reflected across puddles like broken pieces of color. Somewhere in the distance, a train announcement echoed through the night, but Hiroshi barely noticed any of it. His tie hung loose around his neck, his shoulders ached, his phone kept vibrating inside his pocket with unread work messages. And for the third time that week, he couldn't decide what to eat. Not because there weren't options, because his brain felt completely exhausted. At 34, Hiroshi worked as a project manager for a technology company in Tokyo. By most standards, he was successful. He earned good money, he lived in a clean apartment, but lately, life had started feeling strangely heavy. Every day felt mentally loud. His mornings began with emails before he even left bed. Train rides were spent scrolling through news and social media. Lunch breaks disappeared into meetings. Evenings vanished into endless notifications. His mind never stopped moving. And the strangest part was this. Nobody around him seemed to complain. The elderly man sweeping outside his apartment looked calm. The cashier at the convenience store smiled gently despite working late. Even crowded commuters somehow appeared more emotionally composed than Hiroshi felt inside. Meanwhile, he was constantly overwhelmed. One afternoon, during an important client presentation, disaster finally struck. Hiroshi stood at the front of a conference room explaining quarterly projections when his mind suddenly blanked. Completely blanked. The numbers on the screen stopped making sense. His chest tightened. Words disappeared from his memory. 12 people sat silently staring at him. Seconds passed. Then one of his coworkers quietly stepped in to continue the presentation while Hiroshi stood there feeling humiliated. That night, he walked home alone through narrow side streets instead of taking the train. Rain drizzled softly over the city. As he passed a tiny neighborhood park, he noticed an elderly man sitting beneath a wooden shelter, calmly arranging stones beside a bonsai tree. The old man looked up. "You seem troubled," he said. Hiroshi laughed weakly. "Is it that obvious?" The old man smiled. "Only to people who have felt the same." Something about that answer made Hiroshi stop walking. Without fully understanding why, he sat beside the man beneath the shelter while rain tapped gently against the roof. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. Hiroshi instinctively reached for his phone, but the old man quietly shook his head. "Leave it," he said. So Hiroshi slipped the phone back into his pocket. And slowly, something strange happened. For the first time in months, he noticed the sound of rain. Not as background noise, not as something to ignore. Actually noticed it. He noticed the cold air on his skin, the smell of wet earth, the distant hum of traffic fading into silence. His breathing slowed. The old man finally spoke. "In Japan," he said softly, "there is a concept called ma." He drew the kanji character on the bench with his finger. It means the space between things. Hiroshi frowned slightly. The empty space? Yes, but not useless emptiness. Ma is meaningful pause, the silence that allows the mind to breathe. Hiroshi looked confused. The old man continued. Most people today are mentally exhausted because they never allow space inside themselves. Every moment becomes occupied. Noise, information, pressure, stimulation. The mind suffocates. That sentence lingered heavily in Hiroshi's chest because deep down, he knew it was true. Even when he rested, he wasn't truly resting. When eating dinner, he watched videos. When walking, he checked emails. When trying to sleep, he scrolled endlessly. His brain had forgotten what stillness felt like, And maybe yours has too, because modern life trains us to fear silence. If there's a quiet moment, we immediately fill it. We grab our phones in elevators, we play videos while cooking, we multitask during conversations. We turn every empty second into consumption. And slowly, without realizing it, our minds become overcrowded. That's why so many people today feel mentally drained even when they technically rest. Because stimulation is not recovery. Scrolling is not recovery. Constant input is not recovery. The human mind was never designed to process endless information without pause. Yet modern culture celebrates exactly that. Busyness becomes status. Being constantly reachable becomes normal. Having no free time becomes something people brag about. But psychologically, the brain needs something ancient cultures understood very well: rhythm, movement and stillness, focus and release, sound and silence. That is where the Japanese idea of ma becomes powerful. In traditional Japanese culture, empty space is not seen as meaningless, it is considered essential. In Japanese architecture, rooms are intentionally uncluttered because open space creates calm. In Japanese gardens, areas of stillness balance the landscape. In music, silence between notes create emotional depth. Even in conversation, pauses are respected instead of awkwardly filled. Ma teaches that absence can carry meaning. And this philosophy changes the nervous system more than people realize, because mental exhaustion often comes less from effort itself and more from never emotionally exhaling. Imagine trying to breathe in continuously without ever breathing out. Eventually, the body panics. That's exactly what modern overstimulation does to the mind. Your attention stays permanently contracted. Notifications, tasks, screens, deadlines, entertainment, news, pressure. No pause, no stillness, no ma. And eventually, the brain begins showing symptoms: difficulty concentrating, emotional numbness, irritability, feeling detached from your own life, creative exhaustion, constant anxiety. Many people assume they are lazy or broken when this happens, but often they are simply overstimulated. Now, here's something important. This does not mean Japanese people never experience stress. Of course they do. Japan has intense work culture and very real mental health struggles. But what many outsiders notice is something subtler. There is often a cultural respect for deliberate calmness, for ritual, for pacing, for quiet moments. Tea ceremonies, garden walks, seasonal observation, removing shoes before entering a home, careful preparation of food, moments treated with full attention. These practices create psychological breathing room. That's what Hiroshi slowly began learning after meeting the old man. At first, the changes were tiny. Every morning during his train ride, he stopped using his phone. Instead, he simply looked outside. At first, it felt unbearable. His mind twitched towards stimulation. He felt restless, almost guilty. But after several days, his thoughts began slowing down. He started noticing small things: sunlight reflecting on buildings, a child laughing on the platform, the rhythm of the train tracks. Then he created another rule: no screens during meals. Again, it felt uncomfortable at first. Without distraction, he realized how mentally noisy he had become. But eventually, meals became calming instead of rushed. He tasted food more carefully. His breathing slowed. His mind stopped racing quite so aggressively. Then he began protecting small moments of emptiness throughout the day. 5 quiet minutes before work, walking home without headphones, sitting in silence before sleep. Nothing dramatic, yet gradually something changed. The mental fog lifted. He became more focused during meetings, less emotionally reactive, more present with people. Ironically, he also became more productive because the mind functions better when it has space. That's the paradox modern culture misses. We assume constant stimulation improves life, but beyond a certain point, it destroys clarity. The brain needs intervals of emptiness to process emotion, organize thoughts, and recover attention. Without those pauses, everything becomes mentally crowded. And maybe that explains why so many people today feel exhausted, despite living more convenient lives than any generation before. We eliminated physical difficulty, but replaced it with nonstop psychological noise. So how can you actually apply Ma in your own life? First, stop filling every empty second. This sounds simple, but it's surprisingly hard. The next time you wait in line, resist grabbing your phone immediately. Sit with silence for a moment. Notice your surroundings. Let your nervous system settle. Second, create transition rituals. Most people move through life abruptly. Work instantly becomes entertainment. Entertainment instantly becomes sleep. The brain never receives closure. Instead, create small pauses between activities. Take 3 deep breaths after finishing work. Sit quietly before entering your home. Walk for 5 minutes without stimulation. Tiny pauses retrain the nervous system. Third, protect one activity each day from multitasking. Drink tea without content. Eat without scrolling. Walk without headphones. Listen fully during conversations. Attention scattered everywhere eventually becomes exhaustion. Presence restores energy. Fourth, simplify visual and mental clutter. Japanese philosophy often values simplicity because clutter quietly drains attention. You don't need to become a minimalist monk, but clearing small areas of chaos can calm the mind more than expected. A clean desk, a quieter room, a few moments without digital noise. Space outside often creates space inside. Finally, redefine what rest actually means. Rest is not merely consuming entertainment until midnight. Real rest sometimes feels slower, quieter, less stimulating, and yes, sometimes even boring. But boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is often the doorway back to yourself. That's what Hiroshi discovered months later when he returned to the small park on another rainy evening. The old man was again sitting beneath the shelter beside the bonsai tree. Hiroshi bowed politely. "You seem lighter," the old man observed. Hiroshi smiled. "I still have stress," he admitted, "but my mind doesn't feel crowded anymore." The old man nodded slowly. "Because now," he said, "you finally leave room for your life to enter." That sentence captures something many people desperately need to hear. Your mind was not designed to be occupied every waking second. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to exist without constantly consuming. Because peace is not always found by escaping life. Sometimes it appears the moment you finally stop crowding every inch of it. If this video resonated with you, take one moment of silence today before rushing into the next task. And if you enjoy videos exploring Japanese psychology, philosophy, and life lessons, subscribe and join us for the next one. Until next time, leave a little space in your life. Your mind has been trying to breathe.